Right, so we have tested this student repository. Now let's focus on student service. First, I want to show you how you might want to test this, which will be the wrong way of doing things. And then I'm going to show you how to use mocking. So in here, let's go ahead and open up IntelliJ, and let's open the student service class. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Shift Command T. So I want to create test. And you can see that we have the dialog, create test, and there we go. So JUnit 5, and then we have the class name, and we can have the setup. So here, setup before, tear down, and then get all students, add student, so on and so forth. Let's just click on these three members. And by the way, we're going to learn about setup and tear down in a second. So we're going to use them and just say, okay. So now in here, so we have the student service test right here, and we have three methods, right? So currently I can just even say add and then disable. So this is you learning a new annotation, and this will disable these tests, which means that they won't run. So add disabled, and they won't run. Now in here, I can go ahead and let's test that we can get all students. So you might even think that the best way for you to test this, and by the way, let me just remove the Jupyter API assertions because we are using assert J. So in here, you might think, right, so in order for me to test get all students, we first need to have the under test. So here, let's say private, and then I'm going to say student, and then service, under, and then test. And here, let me just press Control and then Enter, and you can see the keyboard shortcut. And I'm going to generate the setup. So in here, we could actually have selected this method from the previous dialog, but in this setup, so this will run before each test. I'm going to say under test equals to new, and then student service. Now inside, we need to pass the student repository. Now the way that we're going to do this is the following. So in here, I want to say private, and then student, and then repository, student repository, and then pass student repository in here, just like that. And now before each test, we're going to get a fresh instance for student service. Now in here, let's just say that let's change this name here to can and then get all students. And what we're going to do is the following. So basically this test is super simple, and that's because if I press Shift Command T and go back to student service, you can see that the only thing that it does, it just calls student repository dot find all. Now when it comes to unit testing, if I go back in here for a second, remember this student repository has been tested. We tested in isolation, and we know that it definitely works. And inside of student service, we have a reference, or we have a field of type student repository. Now you might be thinking that perhaps we can go back to the test, and then here, so this student repository, maybe we can just say add and then auto wire, right? And then we get the real instance for student repository, and then we can add new students, delete, so on and so forth. But in reality, we don't want to do this, right? We don't want to do this because this student repository, we know that for a fact, indeed, its implementation is good enough, right? So every single method that we have in it does work. And this is when we mock this student repository. So we say, right, so here we want this to be a mock using Mockito. So this is org.mockito, just like that. And now what we need to do is the following. So here, in order to initialize this mock, we need to say that Mockito annotations dot and then open mocks, And then inside, let's just say this. So basically, if we have more than one mock, it will initialize all the mocks in this test class. And this, so this returns a closable. You can see here, closable. And what we're going to do is the following. We're going to take this, just like that. So I've just pressed Shift Command V to extract to a variable. And here I'm going to say this will be private, and then paste that. And here I'm going to say that this will be equals to that. And then after each test, so after, or actually tear down method. So here after each, we're going to say auto closable dot and then close. So this allows us to close, and this actually throws an exception, so it's fine. Let's just say that we change this method to throw this exception. So this will allow us to close the resource after the test. And now, so we have things set up. So let's just in here. So now we can go back to testing our method. And the way we're going to test this is we're going to pretty much just say when, and then under test dot get all students. Then in here, we're going to say verify, and we need to import this from Mockito. So here import static method, and this should come from Mockito. So verify, and this will be our mock. So student repository, and then I can say dot and then find all. So we want to verify that this repository was invoked using the method find all. So you can see that this is a little bit strange, right? But what is happening is we basically don't want to test the real student repository when we are testing the student service, because student repository, we know that it works for fact, and then we can just mock its implementation inside of the student service test. And the benefit that we get with that is that our unit test is now fast. So we don't have to bring up the database, create the table, so on and so forth, insert a new student, drop the database, and all of that stuff that you've seen when we tested this repository. So we've done that work once. Therefore, anywhere that we use this repository, we just mock it as we've done it within this student service. So in here, this is what we're doing. So basically we have a mock. So let me just put like that. So we have a mock for the student repository, and then auto closable. And this is because of Mockito. And I'm going to show you a better way of doing this in a second. And then we have the after each, which we then close the resource. And this is our test. So if I run this test, you can see that it works, right? So here, if I say verify that the method delete all was invoked, so this should fail. There we go. So this fails, right? And it failed because you can see that wanted but invoked delete all, right? And you can see that, however, there was exactly one interaction with this mock, and it was find all. So if I go back to the student service, so Shift Command T in here. So when the end test was invoked, so get all students, the mock was invoked with find all. And again, we just have to verify that this is called, because we know that whatever this returns indeed does work. And also we didn't write this method find all, and this is a good way of us actually mocking things, right? Because this is given to us for free and we just rely on its implementation. So there you have it. This is pretty much how you test using Mockito. Now, one thing that I want to improve here is you see that this can be like a little bit confusing and some boilerplate code. So let's just remove this. Let's remove this as well. And let's remove this, and that line. And then in here, so for this class, we're going to say at, and then extended with org.junit.jupyter API extension. And then here, I'm going to say Mockito, and then extensions dot, and then class. So that will actually do what we had before. So you can see that this is much cleaner now. Now, if I basically run all the tests in this class, you can see that the test failed, and that's because we have to change this verify in here to find all. And let's run the tests again. And ta-da, you can see that it works. And these two tests are disabled. That's why they're like that. And you can see ignored 2 out of 3 tests. So there you have it. If you have any questions, drop me a message. Otherwise, let's move on and test the add student method.